On today's episode of Garage Noise, I'm going to show you everything you need to know about straightening a dent in your plastic bumper cover. And we're going to take care of it right now. I'm going to heat this up and I'm going to push this out from the back side. I've loosened up this inner fender here and I can reach up in there with a cold rag. So what I'm going to do is heat this area up and then with a wet rag, get up there and push that out and cool it. Okay, so now I'm going to heat this up good right here. Reach up in there and kind of push this out and cool it. That's looking pretty good. And now I'm going to cool the outside. I got it pretty much in the position I want. There's a little ding left there, but that's okay. Okay, so now you can see that dent. It's just a little low spot right here. It's much better than it was. It was all the way out in here. So now we can sand this down and put a little skim coat of body filler in there and block sand that straight. So now the next step is we're going to get the DA sander. Now you can do this by hand, but I'm going to use 80 grit sandpaper. That's in order for the body filler to stick properly. I'm going to sand the area I want to put a coat of body filler on. Okay, so now we're going to clean this area. I'm going to sand out this little chip here, but we're going to clean this area. I'm going to use some wax and grease remover right here. As always, all the links to the tools and the products I'm using are going to be in the description below if it's something you're interested in. Okay, I've got a little bit of body filler here with some hardener. That's about the right ratio. We're going to mix it up. We're going to fold it in. We're just going to mix it up until it's all one consistent color. We're going to let this set up and dry, and then we're going to come back and block it with some 80 grit. Okay, so now I've got my 80 grit on a block. I'm using this sponge block because it's flexible and there's a little contour to this bumper. So we're going to block this in an X pattern. And I also tape this edge up so I don't get over here and scratch the quarter panel. So we're going to go ahead and block this, and I'm just forming it to the contour, and I'm going to do an X pattern. So now that it's blocked level, I'm going to go over it with some 180 grit sandpaper and smooth it out and remove those 80 grit scratches. I went over it with some 180, and now I'm just going to do some 320 that'll remove all of the 80 and 180 grit scratches, or the 180 grit scratches. Okay, now, and you don't have to do this at home, but I'm going to use some 320 on a soft interface pad on my DA, and I'm just going to smooth around any edges or scratches, and then we'll get that ready for primer. You could do it by hand. What I would recommend is you could use some 600 grit wet dry paper and sand this all around to get it ready for primer, or you can primer over 320 scratches. That's not a problem at all. If you just wanted to go a little bit a step further, you can use 600, but I'm going to hit it with this 320. Okay, now let's get this ready for primer. As you can see, you'll get a little angle here. It's nice and smooth. All the heavy scratches are removed. So we're going to mask this off, and I'm just going to mask along this edge and straight down here because we're going to have to sand the primer. after we let it dry, and this will be sufficient to mask off here. So let's get this taped off and then we'll prime it. So I'm going to use some 2K automotive primer out of a spray gun. If you have a spray gun, you can use that as well. I'll leave the link in the description, or you could use, if you don't have a spray gun, you can use something like this. It's a high build primer out of an aerosol can. That'll work just as well. But a 2K, the difference is this doesn't have any catalyst in it, where the 2K has a catalyst that hardens over the body filler. So it keeps from soaking into the body filler. And that just eliminates any scratches that might soak through. I'm not pulling the trigger fully, I'm just getting a good coat on. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry for about 5 minutes and we'll put another coat on. Okay, let's put another coat of primer on here. So now the primer's totally dry, and what we're gonna do is we're going to block sand it smooth. I've got this soft block with some 320 grit sandpaper on it, and we're just gonna block it until it's flat. I've got a heavy enough coat on here that I have a lot of material here to be able to work with to block. Okay, so now I've got the primer all sanded smooth with the 320 grit sandpaper. I've went around the outside edge of it as well, and now I'm going to take this 1500 grit Scotch-Brite scuff pad. This is just a gray Scotch-Brite scuff pad, and we're going to use this to get in all these hard edges around the edges of this panel along the plastic, because we're going to clear and paint this entire panel. We're going to paint the primer and then clear this entire panel. So we're also going to tape up these edges so we don't get any scratches on the taillight or the adjacent panels or the plastic. We don't want to damage those in the process. So let's do that now. For paint, it's all sanded, ready to spray. All we need to do is clean it with some wax and grease remover real well. We're going to remove the tape and re-tape it. I'm going to tape along this edge so there's no overspray that goes into this jam. And then I'm going to tape these all up again, very nice and neat. Okay, so now this panel is all masked off, sanded, primed, the dent's fixed, and it's ready for paint. Okay, so now this is all ready to spray. It's been cleaned, it's been masked. We're gonna tack rag it off. This is just a tack rag. It's a tacky cloth that's gonna remove any dust particles. We've washed this twice with wax and grease remover, so it's nice and clean. So we're gonna take our gun. I mixed up some paint. The paint is a Nason based paint, brand paint. It's 2 to 1, 2 parts paint, 1 part reducer. And the important thing is to use the right reducer for this temperature, which is a little bit warmer today. So this is a slow reducer. We're going to turn this, is the volume on the paint gun. We're going to turn it all the way in, and we're going to turn it out 2 turns. That was 1 turn. 1, 2. I'm going to open the pattern pretty much wide open. We're going to have about 25 psi at the pressure gauge, and basically we're going to cover the primer. We don't want to get too much color out towards the other panels if we can help it, but we're going to get the primer covered first. one medium coat, let it flash off for 10 minutes, and then apply 2 more coats. So let's get to painting. Just kind of blowing it off. I'm just kind of blowing it off right now. It off just lightly, make sure there's nothing, no contaminants on it, or so no dust, I should say. Okay, so we're ready to go ahead and clear this. I'm gonna tack rag it off. Actually, I've already tack ragged it off. Make sure my tape is good. We're gonna clear it, same setup, 2 turns out, wide open on the fan pattern, and then the air pressure is gonna be around 20 to 25 PSI. And I'm gonna start off with a base coat, which is a medium coat, and then 2 more, or 1 or 2 more coats of clear, and the final coat will be the flow coat. Overlap 50%, stay about 4 to 5 inches away, and you don't want to pull the trigger right on the panel, so you start by pulling the trigger off the panel. Steady speed. And that's the first coat. Just a base coat. I don't want any reaction to happen, so I'm gonna let that cure for about 10 minutes. And then I'm gonna put on a medium coat, or maybe my final heavier coat, my flow coat. Okay, we're gonna put on the flow coat now. We're gonna turn up the pressure just a little bit, get a little bit better atomization. That's it. Got a little bit of particle of dust there, but we'll wet sand that out. So let me show you the finished product. Okay, so let's take a look at the finished product. And look at that, it has a nice gloss, nice shine. There's no more dent, it's entirely gone. Don't worry if you have a little dust or orange peel. I've got a video right here that'll show you exactly how to fix that and make it smooth like glass. So if you want to build your skill and increase your knowledge, start now by subscribing to the channel and clicking that bell. We'll see you next time.